portfolio managers on Alpha Moguls. Thursdays, only on Bloomberg Quint.
Hello and welcome to Bloomberg Quint Special. My guest today is the MD and CEO of the Tata Consultancy Services, Rajesh Gopinathan. Rajesh, thank you very much for joining us on Bloomberg Quint. I want to start my conversation with the digital journey that you had so far. At the end of Q2, you had nearly 28% of your revenues coming in from digital. In that journey, can you take us through what were the ups and downs for you? Because it was again a journey where you were betting on a new technology and a new innovation which was coming in. And how did you go about achieving that? Because over the period of next few years, you have a target of 40% of revenues coming from digital.
I would say that it's been a journey with not much of downs at all. It has been more in terms of a slow start and then an exponential acceleration. And we actually anticipated that. And if you go back to our own commentary at the back end, we anticipated that the real game is to be played when it actually scales, and it will scale when it starts getting integrated inside the enterprise. And we got to prepare ourselves for that point of time and not get overexcited about its early fringe activities. So we have been very, very systematic about our entire approach to digital. It's been a journey that's more than 5-6 years in the making now. We went about systematically both acquiring early skills as well as making sure that a majority of our population is actually getting reskilled in being able to use these digital technologies. And over the last few years, we actually shifted from acquiring digital skills as a standalone activity to looking at contextual knowledge that we have and how can that be used to actually accelerate digital adoption at our clients.
You spoke about integration within enterprise. How tough was it for IT company to convince clients that this is the way to go?
Sajid, the very interesting aspect is every single client that we spoke to completely bought into our vision. So the reason that we were so strong on our conviction was that every time I went and met with a customer, every time we spoke about this whole idea of contextual knowledge and the idea about retraining and scale and core, every single time clients were more than happy to hear what we are saying and gave us feedback that that's the right approach to take. I think there was skepticism in the external world as to whether that's the right thing to do, whether it is from the investor side or from the press part of it. But our conviction came because of the positive feedback that we were getting from customers. So clients actually loved this idea that what is required is for their environment, their context to be kept aware, and their vendor to actually upskill to get the data set so that they are not actually just bolting on digital as a standalone activity, but going through a digital transformation.
So, when you said the critics were there with respect to whether this strategy will work or not, you're basically saying that there was a proof of concept which has to be which has to play out across enterprises. And once that is through, then you have digital at scale, which comes in, right? How tough was it for the proof of concept? Because I remember, speaking to you a couple of years back as well, the deal sizes were 10 million, 5 million, 10 million, and I assume that those were proof of concepts which every enterprise was trying to, test or, taste how it's going to work out. And then the scale up also happened in a big way. I mean, it's a vertical jump which happened in the last 1.5 years with major deals coming your way.
So, in fact, the proof of concepts are even smaller than that. So, and as I said, the big thing is that we anticipated this scale. So we were actually preparing ourselves for this scale rather than trying to maximize participation in the proof of concepts. And looking at what are the core technologies, where is the interface with the core the most impactful, and how do we prepare ourselves for it. As I said, the biggest point was we were getting constant positive feedback from the customers, and the client-side adoption was also very high. Our internal adoption was also high because that was a big jump that we were taking, saying that we will be able to reskill our existing skill people and we'll be able to harvest the contextual knowledge and marry that with the digital skill sets. So this whole program of what we call digital champions internally, that has been a big success. So the positive resonance we were getting both from our customers as well as from our internal talent pool gave us the conviction that we were on the right path, and went against the considered wisdom in the industry and built it out organically.
So is it fair to say that today all your clients, whether it's 10 million plus, 200 million plus, or to half a billion, all of them have at least tested out the digital product or the way it's going to move?
I don't want to say 100%, but almost everyone would have done it. I don't know which are, in fact, I'd be hard pressed to name a customer who has not had
to say 50% or 60%, 70%.
Absolutely. But every single person, all new projects, all new investments, incremental investments are in some form or the other leveraging parts of the digital stack. Whether that be cloud, analytics, mobile, social media, whichever automation, artificial intelligence, whichever be the aspect of it. But almost every single incremental project leverages some or all of these technologies.
And what about skill? You said you have been building on skill and capabilities. The entire organization be ready to take on that big challenge?
Absolutely. In fact, as I said, we are very, very positively enthused by both the offtake as well as the proactiveness with which the organization is taking it. So it has not been a push-based one. It has actually been pull-based. We made the learning assets available to people, and most of it has been actually people doing it on a self-motivated basis. The help that we are given is to provide a context to it and to provide guidance as to what is the best path forward. But a lot of the skill acquisition has been through self-generated and self-motivated sessions rather than a very structured push down the chain.
Looking from an industry point of view, FY15 is when we saw cloudification coming in, where a lot of enterprises are going and adopting cloud. And when we saw that, we saw the Indian industry, IT industry growth rates tapering down. Do you think it's bottomed out, and now that digital has a significant base, at least top 5 has at least 20% of their revenues coming from digital, we are again in that phase of growth coming back to the IT industry?
I think so. I think it's not so much about cloud or anything else. There was a period of economic stress and uncertainty combined with technology change.
Disruption which came in.
Disruption, which actually it is not so much of disruption that happened, but technology experimentation where the project sizes by definition were smaller. We are now in a phase of technology adoption, and the economic environment is also much more constructive. And that's where you're seeing this demand offtake. And the acceleration that you see.
And scale also coming in?
Scale coming in. So that is what I said, a technology adoption wave, which is adoption at scale inside the enterprise.
And you're seeing this across verticals now? BFSI, retail, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals,
See, it is touching all verticals, but some verticals have structural issues within them.
Those are macro and geopolitical issues.
Or industry structure related issues might be there. But otherwise, the wave is flowing through everything. Energy used to be a holdout in these things. Nowadays, energy, especially on the utilities side, is a big adopter, big adopter. So almost every single industry is seeing a big transformation going on.
Machine learning is something which you spoke about in the second quarter, where a lot of emphasis has been done. You have a target of Agile 2020. How significantly machine learning being a disruptor for the industry?
Again, Sajid, you have to see it in perspective. So if you think about the nature of technology or the structure of technology, you will find that whether it was compute, storage, networks, any of these areas, the actual productivity curve is very steep. So the cost per unit functionality keeps on falling. Right? It initially falls due to the usage of tools, later on it falls through the usage of automation. But as the per unit cost falls, the actual consumption increases manifold. It happened in storage, right? We all knew hard disks that were at 100 MB considered to be big. Today, a 500 GB phone is considered to be a standard issue storage capacity. So you've seen that the per unit cost of the functionality falls, but the total volume consumption goes up so much that the total value consumed actually increases manifold. It has happened in storage, it has happened in compute, it has happened in networks. And it is the same thing when you think about it from a functionality at an aggregate IT perspective. So as you see technology permeate across multiple functions, as you see technology step away from being a back office function to being part of the product set itself, part of the product feature, product differentiation, the actual cost of the functionality will go down. So automation, machine learning, these are all elements that will help the cost of the functionality to come down. But we are betting on the fact that the actual consumption of technology will increase so much that the total value spent on tech will increase. One last point on this, the best way to think about it is, you go to any enterprise and ask them that of the $100 that you spend today, if you spend $5 on technology, 5 years from now, is it more likely that you will spend a larger percentage of your expense on technology, or will it be a lesser percentage of your expense on technology? The answer invariably will be that a larger percentage of the total spend will be a tech related spend. So that is the dynamic that we need to be aware of. The functionality cost is actually immaterial. You just need to reskill yourself to stay on the upper end of the services curve and participate in this expanding market.
And from that point of view, you recently had a survey of your clients as well, right? And it came out, they were very optimistic on the kind of tech spend which is going to happen. Do you see that there is going to be a good amount of, and from you, TCS, and from the industry point of view, a lot of farming of those clients going to happen? Because in the last 2-3 years, we saw a lot of IT companies picking up 5-10 million clients, and now it is a time to farm them and scale it up.
Absolutely, because in many of these customers, as I said, technology has been used as part of SG&A. SG&A expenses are typically in the range of about 15% of revenue. So you've been part of that spend. Whereas now, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is retail, whether it is medical devices, more and more inside pharma, and in many other industries, now you're moving into the cost of goods sold.
So basically, it becomes a capex in a form.
It's not just capex. Even in your OPEX line, you're becoming part of the product set. Okay. You're becoming part of the product feature set, the cost of the product itself. And that is typically 4 or 5 times more than an SG&A spend in most industries. So your participation, the wallet that you're addressing is suddenly many folds the original wallet that you were trying to get from.
So is that the reason why in the last 2 quarters we saw a total contract value of almost close to $5 billion coming for TCS, and that's one of the reasons why, as you said, the transition happening from SG&A to part of the entire framework is also leading to higher contracts coming in.
Absolutely. If you take any of these large contracts that you've spoken about, almost all of them are bet on a very core technology transformation as a theme, driving business transformation. So that is changing the changing the boundaries of what that contract is, the scope of what that contract is, leading to large contract wins. But I would think that bulk of it is yet to unfold. Because it's not just the large contracts, you'll see the smaller contracts also appearing across many more functional elements than what we have participated in so far.
Emerging technologies is something which you've been looking at, and I've been reading a lot on from TCS as well, that where all you have big big opportunities coming in. Now that digital is more than 20% for most of the IT companies, and on a revenue growth of 10%, nearly half of that is contributed by digital. How do you see emerging technologies being adopted by Indian IT companies, and especially TCS? And do you see some disruptors coming into this space again?
See, again, to put things in perspective, if you take an industry like banking and financial services, which is 30% of GDP in most economies that we have. TCS is now the largest technology services player in the global BFSI industry, absolutely the largest. So this idea of new technology, emerging technology, actually makes more sense when we adopt it. So we are now getting into a point where we are the ones who can actually get a technology going at scale and make it as a relevant adopter.
The first mover advantage, basically.
There's a first mover advantage. We are the natural calling point for smaller startups to come and experiment with their technology. Our co-innovation network is gaining a lot of traction because more and more startups want to come and talk to us and participate with us because they want to participate within that ecosystem that we have. So we are no longer at a point where emerging technology happens somewhere else and we got to keep a view of it and then try to catch up with it. Actually, we are the ecosystem in which emerging technologies will actually bloom and prove themselves.
Like blockchain, for example, where you've done some good work.
Blockchain is a good example of this thing, but even more so, blockchain is a much more kind of a distributed idea and a technology, and has been around for some time. It's kind of,
but it's again a proof of concept stage for that, right?
Absolutely.
It's not digital. It's not scalable as of now. We've seen some companies, JLR, looking at doing it. Oil and gas, auto parts companies for against counterfeit happening. There's small things, but we haven't seen scale coming in there, right?
Yes, and as NGS has said, we think that the next year or the next few years, we'll see blockchain actually get permeated much more deeper in the value chain of many more industries. Not just the financial services has been at the forefront of adopting it. You're likely to see this coming into many more industries.
You also see the same thing for biometrics as well, like voice biometrics and others, where you see good opportunities coming in?
Biometrics itself is a more specialized area, but I would say that security as a more general element is more going through a step change in the way we think about it. So, see, it's something that started with the cloud. That in our mind, security is linked to very archaic concepts. You lock something up.
Yeah.
So if you have a machine and if you locked it up, you think that it is secure. But if it is sitting on a network, a classic one that in our SEZs at the gate, you're checked whether you're taking a device in or out, but there's a big fat pipe running straight out of it, which is not getting monitored. So our concept of security is tied to the physical world, whereas in the digital world, security, the way it will get, implemented will be very different. So you're moving away from the concept of perimeter security to more transaction level security. And some of these elements like biometrics or other aspects of transaction level security will keep on gaining more and more prominence as the idea of a perimeter just disappears.
And it basically means that over a period of next few years or a decade, we are going to move towards something like a digital industrialization, which happens as more companies.
We are 100% on that path. That is the biggest shift that is happening. So you will see that across industries, in multiple industries. It is how they monetize the data that they create, how they generate it, how they curate it, how they monetize it. That is what is defining the winners and losers. And that to me is the core of it. The industrialization era was that can you actually leverage the ability to translate raw resources into output using industrial power.
Now, digital will ensure that wastages or more coordination and reduction of time, which is normally there for coordination, is reduced.
That, as well as the value of that information asset, will get translated into greater and greater value. How do you utilize that value to change your overall value delivered? And that becomes a primary product rather than the physical product. So the physical product is now a core base product. The product enhancements is actually an information enhancement.
So is it fair to say that the Indian IT sector is also moving up the ladder from once being a maintenance and application to now being value-added app and much more how do you put it, something which increases output and productivity led thing?
Sajid, I think at the heart of it is this construct of Indian IT, right? Because just because there is, what should you say, familiarity, I think there's a lack of appreciation of where this industry has reached. So this industry is now the core technology provider for more than a bulk of the leading corporates globally. The fact that we are listed in India is just a historical fact, right? So the technology services industry is continuously moving and becoming more and more value added in nature and going across multiple streams. And as that happens, we both are driving it as well as participating in it.
I have limited time, so I will ask two more questions. One, which is more to do with the industry and the challenge today, because as you go digital, you need to have on-site employees and manpower there, and that's becoming a big challenging environment, especially if you have a client in US where H-1B visas are a big issue. From an industry leader's point of view, are you worried that though there hasn't been much of no legislation as such, the regulations or arbitrariness of awarding visas have come into fore, and you've seen higher rejection rates coming in for H-1B visas?
See, if you look at the people who are talking about it most, it does not really matter whether you're a services company, you're an Indian company, you're a Korean company, you're an American company. The fact of the matter is that the skill gap that exists in the developed markets is phenomenally high. So by some estimates in the US, currently the difference between skilled technological jobs and available talent is almost 1 million people, right? So that is the real gap. So if you are trying to hire in that market and that market is supply constrained, every single person who is trying to hire there is facing the same challenge. So there is a real issue that a huge the demand is galloping at a very high pace, whereas the supply, the base core supply, is limited by demographic factors. When you have a population size that is actually declining and the total number of workforce coming in is fairly limited, into the total number of people coming into the workforce is fairly limited. So this gap is likely to continuously expand, and that will stress every single person who's trying to actually hire in that market. There is nothing unique to us per se in that.
But will that be a disruptor for many of the companies, that they will not be able to scale up as required?
I don't know how that will be
especially
translated.
from a digital skill set point of view, are you facing that kind of crunch in those markets?
Absolutely, there is a crunch, and which is why we are participating significantly in trying to debottleneck it. So if you look at our Go IT program or our Ignite My Future in schools program, we are trying to significantly increase the pull-through of students into STEM education courses, because we believe that unless that supply side issue is solved, the politics of it is a symptom rather than a cause.
So because we are now hearing that the entire H-1B program will be overhauled. You will have, the lottery system may go off. You will only allow H-1B for those who have masters from the US. There won't be H-4 visas available for spouse and all. All this, when you put it together, by 2019 is when it's going to come for review. Will it impact the IT industry very bad? Are we just, we're not giving due importance to this challenge which is coming towards us?
No, all of us are giving full importance to it. Let me put it this way, that we have an industry leadership position, and we are among the largest hirers of technology talent in most of the markets that we operate in. And any reform of any nature, whether it be in the education system, whether it be in the immigration system, in any system, any reform that actually increases talent availability will be net beneficial. Any reform that actually reduces talent availability will be net detrimental to all the participants. So I'm hopeful that given the broad-based nature of this demand, reforms will be of a nature that will actually increase the talent availability.
My final question to you is on the capital utilization policy. You have articulated it many a times. What is, we saw 2 buybacks happening in the last 2 years. Is this going to be the route going forward for TCS to give money back to the shareholders?
So we have articulated our strategy as saying that we needed to maintain a certain core cash reserves. Beyond that, 80 to 100% of our free cash flow that we generate in a year, subject to any acquisitions or anything that happens, we will be returning it back to our shareholders. The choice of what instrument to use, how much of it through dividend, how much of it through buyback, that choice is a flexible choice, and that the board will determine it as much from a tax planning perspective as also from the perspective that different shareholder communities prefer different instruments. So we have a fairly broad-based ownership structure. We are one of the largest retail shareholder bases in the country.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that the choice of the instrument actually appeals across a spectrum of our investors. So you will see us typically have a full portfolio of instruments that we use to give back that cash.
Rajesh, thank you very much for joining us on Bloomberg today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.